AI going to replace you? If you're someone like me that makes a living in the creative industry, this is a question that's probably been keeping you up at night. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better answer to that question. This is a video about the psychology of the client-creative relationship in the age of AI, and it's split into a couple parts. First off, we're going to get into the part that doesn't change with AI, the timeless part. And then we're going to get into the details of how AI is changing the game. So let's start with a very simple question. What exactly is it that clients want? When I first started working in the creative industry back in 2011, I'll be honest, I didn't really have a good idea of what a client was. Of course, you have things from Hollywood, TV shows like Mad Men, where you're kind of fed this cultural idea that client work is really just about high-stakes pitch meetings, schmoozing, wining and dining your clients so that they continue to give you work, right? And there's nothing really wrong with this picture. It's where I started. It's where a lot of people start when they first start getting into creative work. But it's not really the complete picture. So what is a better picture then? So out of all the clients that I've worked with over the course of my career, on the surface, they come from all different walks of life, but there are three things that literally all of them have in common. First off, they have a problem that they need solved. Secondly, they are personally held accountable for the outcome of the project, and this has implications for their career standing. And lastly, they're among the busiest people that you will ever meet, with their lives basically split across countless meetings, projects, and also their very busy personal lives. So basically from there, we can reverse engineer what exactly it is that a client would find valuable. First off, you as the creative service provider need to take responsibility for solving the problem. Second, because there's so much on the line for the client, you need to reduce the risk as much as possible during this engagement. And lastly, you need to make this process as easy and seamless as possible so that clients can get back to their own lives. And out of these 3 points, risk management is actually the essential core of the creative game. I'll give you a couple examples of what this looks like, but what it all boils down to is basically just one word: specialization. So at the start of my career as a video producer, I would take on basically all the work that I could get. I started out mostly in fashion and lifestyle, but I was doing things like corporate, events, human interest, music videos, weddings. So from the client's perspective, most people on the marketplace look like this, right? With no real differentiated focus or expertise. So now at the start of 2026, 15 years into my career, I've simplified my offering a lot so that it's way easier for clients to understand exactly what it is that they're getting when they work with me and how it's different than hiring other video producers. Let me give you another example. So I have a friend, Jocelyn, who is a very talented painter, illustrator, and muralist. And very early on in her career, she started developing this iconic blob-like figure, and she basically built her entire body of work around it. And this makes it very easy for clients to greenlight her during the decision-making process because they basically know exactly what they're going to get when they decide to hire her. Again, high specialization, low risk. Let's get to the next part. How has the creative game changed with the development of AI? So on the one hand, in video production, you have this entirely new field of creators who are carving out a specialization for themselves, specifically as AI filmmakers. But besides this entirely new field of AI-generated filmmaking, what are some other ways that client expectations are changing with the advancement of AI? So you remember my previous point about how, for the client, the creative process should be made as easy as possible. Well, AI is basically accelerating that process. I'll give you a few very broad points because any specific technique or workflow is going to be pretty quickly outdated. So first off, pre-visualization. This is becoming way more essential because it basically allows the client to understand exactly what they're getting before they even start the process. And even for myself, the past couple of years, I've been working mostly in documentary style content, which normally in the past wouldn't require any kind of previs or storyboarding. But I found that pre-visualizing as much of the story as I can before we even get into the production process really helps the client so that they're able to reduce uncertainty as much as possible. Secondly, the margin of error has gone down significantly. Basically, there's really no such thing anymore as blaming things on human error. If you haven't been using AI to check your work before you send it to the client, start doing that. And lastly, the entire process is accelerating in terms of client expectations around speed and capacity. And this isn't just limited to creative work. Expectations are rising across the board for all knowledge work. It's kind of like what happened when we went from typewriters to the personal computer. Productivity is expected to increase. So back to my original question. Is AI going to replace you? Is all creative work going to disappear? Should we just give up on making a living creatively and wait for universal basic income to arrive? I don't want to be overly optimistic because at the end of the day, things are moving so fast that it's really hard to predict. But I do want to show you this one graph about my own industry, which is video and content production. If you look at the trend, even with all of the doom and gloom that people are feeling within this industry, the reality of the situation is that the demand for content has actually never been higher. So you think about the past, right, where basically only A-list brands could afford to produce a consistent stream of content. But now it's every single brand, whether big or small, everybody needs content now. It's just the reality of how we're communicating. So the problem isn't that creative work is disappearing in general. The problem is who that work is flowing towards. And the answer to that is simple. The work is increasingly flowing towards people who are viewed as experts within their niche. Basically the ones who are able to deliver the best result with minimum risk. And yes, that brings up a very real problem, because if the majority of work is flowing towards specialists, that means that entry-level work is disappearing. And this is a very real trend that we've seen already in the marketplace. And this is not a question that I can pretend to have the answer to. But hopefully what I can shed some light on is what it takes for a creative to be successful now, especially when they're doing client-facing work. So of course, creatives, they still need a solid foundation in a particular skill set, whether that's video production, design, illustration. But on top of that, communication skills are becoming increasingly more important, because language is now the primary way that we're interfacing with both humans and machines. And then lastly is the meta skill of adaptation, basically neuroplasticity. We're moving into an age where the ability to adapt and update rapidly to new trends, to new workflows, and new ideas is becoming a more reliable indicator of success. And yeah, I know that's a lot to take in all at once, right? Because the rate of change has been so fast that it's easy to feel like you're getting swept away. But even amidst all this change, there's one thing that doesn't really change as quickly, and that's the underlying geometry of human psychology. The way that humans respond to things like risk management, trust, and responsibility. These are core human traits that have been more or less stable for the past thousands of years. And if it gives you any reassurance, that's the part that's going to be stable, whether you're working in the age of madmen, now, or in the future.